recording it in case you found this of value and you can share it with a teammate. Please feel free to do that, and I'll send that out. I think that is about it. So I'd like to introduce Ned Miller from Third Act Sales. Today he's going to tell you a little bit about himself and introduce Chris. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Stephanie. I'm going to put in a plug for the Michigan Bankers Association. Even though I live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, which is a long way from Michigan, I appreciate the hard work that the Michigan Bankers Association is doing to keep bankers apprised of what's going on in our industry, as well as bringing interesting content to member banks. So I think today you'll enjoy the presentation by my friend Chris Wallace, who is the president and co-founder of the Interview Group, which is also headquartered in Philadelphia. I've known Chris for over 5 years, and I have to say that there are a couple things about him that you need to know. One is that he's really smart. He knows about a lot of things, because in his career, not only has he been involved in a variety of sales and marketing roles in a variety of industries, his consulting experience spans a lot of different types of industries. And one of the things that I found valuable about him is I brought him in to work with some of my bank clients over the years, is the fact that he's able to draw on the experience of other industries. And in the retail space, there's nobody that I trust more to provide context for what banks are going through. He and I have had long conversations about what's happening in the banking industry. He's thought a lot about the questions that COVID-19 presents. And he's going to ask, I think, some interesting questions as he talks through some of the things that he's been thinking about, and shares with you some things that hopefully will spawn some additional questions from you. As Stephanie indicated, by all means, feel free to send in questions during the presentation. And at the end, we'll certainly encourage you to open up your phone lines if you have a question of Chris. But this will hopefully be provocative and give you some context for thinking about not so much where you are today, but where you have to take a very important aspect of your bank's success quotient, which is going to be the customer experience. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my friend Chris Wallace. Chris, welcome.
Ed Miller, thank you so much for not only the invitation to be on, but also that very kind welcome. I thought for sure when you said there's a few things you need to know about Chris Wallace, it was going to involve the diploma that's over my shoulder here on the wall from Syracuse University. Probably, besides my children, one of my proudest accomplishments. So I am from upstate New York. I'm a very proud Syracuse Orange person. So well, I'm really glad
if you've gone to Michigan State or Michigan or someplace like that, but Syracuse, who cares?
We play a little basketball occasionally. So without further ado, I am going to jump in. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and I'm going to try to make sure that I get this set up properly so people can see the presentation. Give me one moment. Let's make sure that this looks right. Can people see my screen okay? Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
We sure can, yep.
Great. So Ned shared an article with me yesterday, which he often does, from the Wharton School and the Knowledge at Wharton content that they put out. And the title of the article is Why a Customer Experience Needs to Be #1 in Every CEO's Priority List. And when we think about the times that we're in right now, customer experience has become something of an intense focus. And we believe it's going to be a period of very rapid innovation and really acceleration of new customer experience models, new service models for customers, and really finding ways to meet the customer where they're at, so to speak. Now, customer experience is something that was on people's minds leading into coronavirus, but we believe that both through necessity and through opportunity, customer experience in a lot of industries, and not the least of which being the banking industry, is really going to go through a rapid period of growth and innovation. The moment is here for people in the customer experience space, and we believe that doesn't just reside in the marketing department anymore or in the HR department anymore. This really does need to be an organization-wide commitment. So I'm going to start out by taking you someplace that's a little bit different from banking, probably near and dear to the hearts of many people in Michigan, and that's the auto industry. And we're going to talk about that experience. I always like to frame things in an industry that's sort of outside what your day-to-day business world looks like. So I want to give everybody a second to look at the slide that I have up. Look at the picture and see if you can spot the error in this picture. I'm going to give everybody a second. This is not a Where's Waldo or anything like that, but I want to give people a chance to kind of review that picture and see if you can see the error in that picture. Okay, give you another second. The first error that I see that jumps right out to me is the fact that the people in it have smiles on their faces, okay? When you think about the auto purchasing process, it's rare that a smile or any real joy comes from that process. Maybe when you drive off the lot and you're in it for the first time, but usually it takes you a little bit of time to have the whole process sort of wear off and have the adrenaline wear off of the ordeal that is purchasing a car. And we've all been through this, right? I'm assuming most people on this call have been through the car buying process. And let's think about what that entails. Okay, typically when you're going through that process, what are the key highlights of that process? So you wait for this. You get to a dealership. You wait for a salesperson. You check in at the front. They say salesperson will be with you shortly. You sit there and you wait and you look back on the row of desks and you sort of see which person's going to draw the short straw to talk to you that day. So then they come up and what do they do? Paperwork. They take down all your information. They're learning about you. They're doing the whole discovery process. They start to get into, what type of vehicle you're looking for, how many people in the family, so on and so forth. And they're going through that whole sales process. Then it's okay, if you want to look at a vehicle or you want to take a test drive, now we got to photocopy your license. And this is frankly to me, the most comical part of the process. They go to photocopy your license and somehow they're gone for like 25, 30 minutes to photocopy your license. I'm not sure how that works, but they're gone a long time. They finally come back. Great, here we go. Here are the tags. Let's go here's the information you need. Here's your brochure. Let's go get the car. I'll get it pulled around. So a couple more minutes go by. The car pulls up. You get in it. You go for your test drive. Okay. At that point, you're probably 45 minutes to an hour into the process and you're not even done with the test drive yet. I could go on and on and on. I haven't even gotten to the point where it's let me talk to my manager, the whole negotiation, the haggling, all of that. But the point being that it's not terribly pleasant. It is not set up to make sure that the person going through it is really getting what they need. Ultimately, if they need a car, they're going to get a car, but it's not going to be easy to get there. There's a lot of friction in that process. That was yesterday. Okay. Now I'm not going into things like Carvana. I'm getting a little feedback from somebody. If you could mute your line, please. I'm not going to go into things like Carvana and other sort of what I would call online purchasing models, because the vast majority of customers still don't want to purchase a vehicle that way. There are aspects of that experience that are great, and it's a great way to do the online research and things like that. And everybody's doing their online research. But the actual auto buying process, most consumers want to be able to do that test drive. They want to be able to sit in it. They want to be able to go through that last step in the process. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at, this is the way that it was. This is the way the experience was. And this is how it's evolved in a very, very short period of time. Again, very near and dear to the hearts of people in Michigan. We have, good old Cadillac, right? Probably the most iconic brand in the auto industry, probably globally. And we have this iconic brand that had a pilot start last fall, a small pilot that started last fall with an experience called Cadillac Live. Now, what Cadillac Live is Cadillac Live takes that initial consultation with somebody about a vehicle. It removes it from the dealership. It's not a phone call. It's not walking into a dealership. It's not the traditional tire kicker activity that a lot of people go through. It is, I might be interested in buying a vehicle. I would like to learn more about that vehicle, and I'd like to talk to somebody who might be able to address my needs. When you think about starting the auto buying experience, or really any major purchase for that matter, you typically start with a lot of anxiety. There's the anxiety of, I want to make sure that I pick the right thing. I want to make sure that I get a good deal. I want to make sure that I do my due diligence. So that's why people spend so much time doing the online research. So that anxiety starts. Now, when Cadillac decided to remove that initial consultation from the dealership and move it much further upstream around the time that you're doing that online research, they created an experience that we believe can help transform the way that the auto purchasing process goes, how that whole consultation, how that relationship between the brand and the customer gets forged. So essentially what they do is you go onto the site and you initiate a live video consultation. On the other end, you will have an actual live person in real time. It's not virtual reality. It's not demo. It's not a video. It is a live person who you can ask questions of. They can learn about you. They can walk you around. They will be in they're actually in a studio, but they will walk you around this showroom studio that has their most popular vehicles. It doesn't have every model, but it has their most popular vehicles. You tell them what you're interested in. They will go sit in that vehicle. They can show you around. You can ask them to press certain buttons. You can ask them to show you certain features. And you can go through a lot of the exploration process that you would typically do in the dealership in that interaction with a live agent via video. Now, that experience isn't for every single person. But what it does is it allows you to take that anxiety that you have of, I want to make sure that I get the right thing. And you can take out a big chunk of your decision-making process through that video consultation before you ever show up in a dealership. The other thing that allows you to do is to really streamline the time that you spend looking for a vehicle. You're doing the online research anyway. If this just becomes part of your online research, it actually helps your decision-making process, helps you whittle things down. They can then take your information about what you're interested in, what your needs are, and they can get that to a dealership. They're going to refer you to a dealership in your area that is best equipped to suit your needs, based on location, based on vehicles that they have on the lot, based on a lot of different criteria. They're able to gather and they're able to get that over to one of their dealership partners, and they're able to set you up to walk into that dealership much further ahead in the process than you were yesterday if you started by walking into the dealership yourself. Now, this won't completely change the whole dealer construct and the dealer model. And again, it's not going to push people completely to an e-commerce transaction to buy their vehicle. But what it does is it gives people a new opportunity to initiate that transaction, and it becomes a purely value add experience. This is not a situation where the person on the other end of that phone, or excuse me, on the other end of that video chat is trying to sell you anything. The only thing they're trying to do is help you narrow down your decision-making process. Rule things in, rule things out, narrow it down so you can make the most informed decision. It takes the pressure out of the situation. You're not pressured to make a decision. All they're looking to do is help you and forge a relationship between the customer and that brand. Now, this is not something that was completely spun up during the coronavirus crisis that we're all going through. It had been in the works, but it reached prime time and critical mass and is now out there nationwide currently to all customers who are interested in buying a Cadillac. And all the things that happen after this, you're starting to see commercials where they can do a personalized concierge test drive, so they can bring a vehicle out to you to do the test drive. You can do the purchase completely virtually through a dealer. It's all through a dealer. It's not done through an online portal, but you can do it through that dealer and handle the entire process without ever stepping foot into a dealership. Now, again, there was some of that was available before, but Cadillac led the way in getting this video consultation to market. And other brands like BMW and Lincoln have been the ones to sort of be the fast followers in getting something similar to market. But we believe very strongly, as to the folks at Cadillac, that this is a trend that's not going away. They believe this is going to drive a lot more traffic, and really that first touch point in the auto buying process is now going to be this virtual consultation. So the reason I walk you through that is sort of frame up the yesterday. And I know that it seems, at this point, seems like a very long time ago, but it really wasn't that long ago. To think that you have 3 auto brands that have gotten a virtual consultation process fully to market and fully scaled since coronavirus started is really incredible to think. For how outdated that industry has been in terms of the serving the customer, to think how quickly the coronavirus has helped sort of accelerate this customer experience transition is incredible. So let's take that concept and let's apply that to the world of banking. Let's look at the way, I call this sort of the before state. What did the before state of banking look like? The BC, the before Corona, what did it look like? So when you think about the typical consumer in the banking transactions and banking support, there's really three primary channels through which they're going to be served. The first, the most traditional, is going to be your branch experience, right? You're going to have somebody who walks into a branch, and there are a lot of pros to the branch experience. It's a personal transaction. Every bank, in some way, shape, or form, is going to tell a story of, we're local, we're personal, we're going to provide you that customized support that you need. Now, the smaller the bank, the more they're going to rely on that story. And in many cases, the more it's actually true, right? You're able to provide that community-based support. You know the people. You've seen their children get raised. You've sponsored the Little League teams. You really do have that close connection in the community. And the branch has always been the hub for that type of relationship. And if you pour a good cup of coffee, sometimes people are just wandering in for the sake of getting a cup of coffee. Now, when you think about other parts of the branch interaction, the branch experience that are positives, most issues and transactions can be addressed within the branch. If you have a live person and you're in a branch, you think about the things that you can get done, the majority of it can get done through that transaction. You typically don't have to turn a customer away, have them walk out, and have to go get their transaction, their need met in another way. You can typically do most of it in that branch. Now, those are the positives of the branch experience. You think about the cons of the branch experience. And this is sort of the last several years in banking has been sort of the push and the pull between the online and the physical experience and which one's going to win out. Well, we think about the reasons why branches have been under scrutiny. It's not the most convenient experience for customers anymore. With the proliferation of technology and the ways that their demands are being met by a whole host of other service providers, waiting to go into a physical location is not necessarily the most convenient way for them to do it. You think about the way that some of the larger banks have sort of disrupted that model. They have much later hours. They're open on Sundays. That creates a whole host of other challenges. But for the most part, you have an experience that's still not terribly convenient. It's not an on-demand experience for the customers. The cost to serve is high, right? As you expand those hours, as you have to pay more people to be in the branches longer, your cost to serve that customer is going way up. And it's taking an already expensive customer contact channel, and it's making it even more expensive, right? Brick and mortar is not a cheap way to serve customers anymore. Again, it's personal, and you can get a lot done, but it's not necessarily most convenient for the customers, and it's certainly not cheap to the banks. So that's why it's under a lot of scrutiny, is how do we find the way to serve these customers in the right way while protecting our bottom line for our stakeholders? So you have call centers, which are a complement to the branch environment, right? This accounts for the fact that the branches cannot be open 24/7. Well, in most cases, the call centers are an always-on model. It's an on-demand model. If customers need help with something, they can call and they can get somebody on the phone, if not 24/7, pretty close to it. Now, it's a more cost-effective customer service channel. It's a more effective way to meet the customer's needs, to service the needs and the challenges that they might have. It also gives you the ability to help in many cases, but not all. Not every problem can be solved over a phone conversation, but a lot of them can. In a lot of cases, the customer's needs are resolved. What are the cons to that experience? What are the detractions from the call center interaction? The experience is far less personal. A call center transaction, a phone conversation, is far less personal across really all service providers, right? It drives more frustration and more friction. It is much easier to lose your temper or to be maybe a little bit pushy or aggressive with somebody if you cannot see them, you're not physically standing in front of them, or if in your mind they're not a real person, it's just somebody on the other end of the line. It can drive a lot more frustration. It can lead calls to escalate in a way that typically would not happen in a branch, or hopefully they wouldn't happen in a branch. Also, a lot of times the calls are mostly driven by needs, It's reactive. It is customers having a problem with something. They need that problem solved. It's not typically I want to open an account or I need advice on this. They're not really looking to that channel for that. It truly is, it's really problem solving. It's troubleshooting for that customer in a lot of cases, which isn't necessarily the most profitable or the most interesting transaction for the bank. The 24/7 model also typically requires some sort of offshore support, which a lot of times causes frustration, right? Staffing a 24/7 call center operation is not easy. You do have to look to other parts of the globe to be able to provide that support. And between language barriers and poor training and things like that, a lot of times that channel is driving some of the poorest interactions between the bank and their customer. It's been sort of a necessary evil. It has not necessarily been a super high quality customer touch point throughout the whole experience with the bank. Finally, you have online, right? You have a purely digital interaction between the customer and the bank. So when you think about the pros, instant access for the customer, and I would assume those of you who have a good suite of online tools have noticed a significant uptick in the usage during the COVID crisis. People want to know what's going on. They want to be able to look at, if they didn't know how to figure it out before, in a lot of cases, they're learning how to figure it out now. They're using tools through necessity that they weren't necessarily using before. So it's always on. There's an increasing number of issues that can be addressed online. It's still not holistic, but the amount of self-service and the amount of issues that can be resolved by accessing digital channels is going up. So there's definitely progress in the industry there. It's also going to be the lowest cost channel. The more self-service a customer can do, the more they're going to, the more you're going to be able to drive down costs and be able to meet their needs in a way that is cost effective for your organization. What are the cons? Obviously, it's the most impersonal of all the contact channels. When you factor in that typically a customer is not going to be able to go on and get high quality advice through that interaction, it really is, if they can try to find a simple need that can be met through a digital support mechanism, or process some sort of simple transaction through the online tools that are available to them, but they're not getting a significant amount of high quality advice through those channels. Customers who are not tech savvy or are not good at navigating these tools, even if they do have the ability to get to the website, log in, whatever the case may be, it's not always easy to find what they need. So that can drive a lot of frustration. It can drive a lot of, frankly, more phone calls back to your call center because that interaction with the technology is not meeting their needs. It also leads the customer to sort out what they're going to do next. It forces them to go through all the information, sort it out, and make a decision of what their next move is. Frankly, a lot like an auto buying experience and the research that the customer does. If left to their own devices, are they going to necessarily draw the conclusion that is best for them, right? A lot of customers have a lot of doubt that they're able to actually find the best solution for them simply by using online tools. So that's what it looks like today. That's what it looked like yesterday. Before COVID, that was how the customer experience, what those customer interactions typically looked like from a retail banking perspective. Now let's look at sort of what has changed, or kind of what state we find ourselves in right now. What do they need right now, right? During this period, through the COVID crisis and after, what are the things that the customers are always going to be looking for? They're going to be looking for advice. And the work that we've done with banks, we have found that what customers continually come back to is this idea of the bank that's going to win is the one that can give me the most high quality advice when I need it. They still need help navigating financial decisions, finding the right products, comparing rates. It's not that much different than buying a car. There's a lot of variables. And if you are not a financial professional, sorting those things out for the average consumer is daunting. So they still look to their bank for advice. And that is a real opportunity to differentiate in the experience. Support. We talked about what those support channels are. They still need to have their problem solved as quickly as possible with as little friction as possible. That's not going to change. They're still going to want that. So when you think about the experience and the evolution, you still have to account for the fact that people are going to have needs, around the clock, and they're going to want somebody to be able to meet those needs quickly. The one that we're going to add into this equation that you didn't really have before, not to any great degree when it came to serving that customer through these various channels, was safety, right? The idea that you could get the most personalized transaction through a branch, people generally took for granted the safety of that branch, especially from a health perspective. They assumed it was going to be clean enough for them to maintain their health. They weren't necessarily worried about whether or not somebody else sneezed. If they were, they stayed away, but it wasn't the masses. It was a small number of people. For the foreseeable future, people talk about until there's a vaccine, and once there's a vaccine, people are going to be, completely feel safe again. I don't know that that's necessarily going to be the case. And the research that we've seen is that customers are going to remain wary of a foot traffic in-person experience for a very long period of time. So the innovation is really going to have to help meet all three of these needs. When we think about how customer experience is going to evolve, it cannot be just one of these. It cannot be just safety. If you're just focused on safety in the medium and the long term, you are not going to meet the needs of the modern customer. You have to account for all three of these things. So when you think about how were you going to meet those needs, what are the forces in play that we need to consider to make sure that we are able to meet these needs, right? What are the options we have available to us? So let's consider a couple of outside forces that are in play. The first is, now this was a trend in banking with branches before coronavirus, but this just highlights how much it's going to accelerate now. 74% of companies believe that, I apologize, there's a typo down there at the bottom, but 74% of companies are looking at ways to reduce their real estate footprint and to serve customers in a different way through work from home models or virtual models. 74% of companies are looking to reduce their real estate footprint. So you would assume that that's going to apply probably even more so in the banking business, where that trend was continuing, or I'm sorry, that trend had already started in terms of looking how to maximize the branch locations, get the best, the most out of your brick and mortar locations. But you have to guess that from a cost savings perspective, organizations are going to be looking for ways to drive as much efficiency as they possibly can. 43%, so you've got the company factor. Now you've got the employee factor. And talent is something that you absolutely have to consider when you're thinking about how to deliver this modern, evolved customer experience. 43% of employees across all industries want some form of work at home component after the crisis is over. So when you think about that, 43% doesn't necessarily leap out at the page and look like an overwhelming number, but think about that. Nearly half of all employees across all industries are going to expect that there's some sort of work from home option or remote work option available to them after the crisis is over. Now, I'm sure that in the banking business, there's just simply some roles that cannot be done remotely, but hopefully some of the things I'm going to talk about are going to challenge you to look at the ones that can. Because not only are you going to look to deliver a great experience for the customer, but a lot of times that great customer experience begins with a great employee experience and meeting the employee where they're at. So that's a factor that you have to consider, is what employees are going to want, what they're going to be willing to do. 57% of customers are now regularly using some form of video conferencing software. Now you think about the fact that FaceTime and Zoom and Hangouts and WhatsApp and all the different technologies, Skype, think about how long Skype has been around. And the thought was Skype was going to revolutionize the way that people communicated. And it just hadn't reached critical mass. It had grown, and platforms like WebEx and other business-oriented platforms had really driven that growth. But the consumer person-to-person interactions, sort of the mass market of video conferencing and video calls, really hadn't hit until the COVID period. So now it's commonplace for grandparents to be, FaceTime you could do before one click, but now Zoom's grandparents, I'm doing 3 a week with my in-laws, and they're able to see their grandkids. We're doing group calls so the cousins can see each other. People have found a way to figure out this technology pretty quickly. So now what was once a futuristic idea in the last 10 weeks has become commonplace for a majority of Americans and is only increasing. This trend is only going to accelerate. This is not going to slow down. Video is here to stay. So these are a couple factors that are worth considering when you think about, okay, how do we deliver an experience? Well, our bank's going to want to likely going to want to reduce our physical footprint, both for our, our corporate and professional staffs, as well as for the people that serve our customers through branches and or call centers. People aren't necessarily itching to go back to call centers, and all the companies that we work with in the call center space, they're looking for ways to make the work at home solution a permanent remote solution. Then you've got the customers. The customers are used to using the technology more now. They have the ability to access this technology that prior to this may have seemed a little bit too daunting for them. So these forces all converge to what I'm going to call here the opportunity for an evolved customer experience, or one example of an evolved customer experience in the banking world. Just as with auto, which would have seemed very hard, you could say, it's not really something that you can do via video. You can't do via video. You can't necessarily do the whole thing via video. But what I'm going to encourage each of you to think about is, how can you look at the opportunity in those three forces that are all coming together right now and take advantage of it to leverage the power of video to drive a better interaction for your customers? And we're going to walk through what some of these pros and cons are, okay? When you think about the pros of the video transaction, you are able to provide personalized advice and support. So it's a person. It's a live person. It's a person you can see. If it's a person that you have a relationship with already and you have that trust with them already, now it becomes a high quality interaction where you can see that familiar face, and it puts you at ease and at comfort that you're going to get the best quality support that you need, that you're looking for. It's a safe interaction. It checks the box of, I'm not comfortable coming into a branch. I don't know how long it's going to be. I might think about who went into branches. When you think about the demographics of who's typically walking into a branch, in a lot of cases, it's going to be people in more at-risk health and age categories. So being able to provide that level of support to them provides them a safe, comfortable interaction. It saves the consumer time. It saves them time. It's more convenient. It's not as easy as pulling up an app and transferring funds, but it's not that far off. They don't have to get in their car. They don't have to drive down. If they have a need for support, they have a need for opening an account or asking questions about what accounts to open or what to do, how to navigate the current situation, that type of thing, they can get that without having to get in their car and go to a physical branch. Reduces the need for physical space. So it's going to provide a cost savings if you can take a certain percentage of the transactions that are done through a branch and move them to a virtual environment. Is going to reduce the physical footprint that you need. It provides staff flexibility and control. What I mean by that is, I do believe that the opportunity to take certain portions of your workforce and start to move them or allow them to have more flexibility in what their workplace is, it's going to drive a lot more retention with employees. It's going to drive a much better relationship with your employees, and it's going to allow them to test how to make this work in serving the customer. And what I mean by control is this. If the employee typically, if they work in a branch, would be waiting for someone to come in, waiting for an opportunity to, through foot traffic. And we know that banks are tracking their foot traffic, what percentage of people come in are looking to open an account, what you're looking for support, what you're looking for deposits or cashing a check, that type of thing. Instead of waiting for that opportunity to walk in and then trying to take a deposit and turn it into opening an account or something like that, now the employee has the ability to schedule appointments. You have the opportunity to take more control over your schedule, be more proactive, and be setting up a higher quality, more proactive interaction with that customer than simply being reactive and waiting for them to walk in. Now, when I talk about the scheduling, that can be done virtually, or that can be a virtual consultation that turns into, why don't you meet me at the branch to sign the paperwork? Why don't you meet me there to talk about your options further? But that way you're able to control that process. It's more convenient for the customer because they can plan for it. It's not, I think I need this. I'm going to hope that the person in the branch can help me today. It also allows for increased self-service adoption. It is a lot easier for somebody to say, oh, Mrs. Jones, let me show you real quick how you can access that mobile check deposit, and they can share their screen and they can walk you through it. Now, most interactions that I've had on the banking side and most that I'm aware of, unless you get an escalated level of service, doing a remote interaction, having somebody walk you through it, the best you're going to do is go to this website, let me walk you through it. but the screen sharing adds a whole new dimension of showing customers how easy it is to find those self-service tools. And hopefully that high quality interaction can lead to less need for those support transactions, those support interactions going forward. The last one to me is sort of a summation of why we believe that this video transaction, this video interaction is going to become a much bigger part of the experience. It's more personal than a call center, and it's more practical than a branch. Somewhere in between those two transactions, those two interactions between bank and customer, you have this efficient, personalized. We've all learned how to build relationships. Maybe not as good as being face-to-face, but we've all learned how to do business and drive high-quality interactions, personal interactions, both in our professional lives and our personal lives through video interactions. It's better than it was before, and it's certainly better than a faceless, nameless person on the other end of the line that is simply an agent ID number. Now, there are drawbacks to it. Don't get me wrong. There are definitely things that banks and organizations are going to have to figure out in order to make this a reality, in order to get it to market. Privacy and security, right? We know that banking is a heavily regulated industry, and there are going to be aspects of we have to be able to protect their privacy. We have to have these be secure, these secure interactions to make sure that sensitive data is not lost in the process or leaked in the process. We believe there's ways to do that. It's being done now, by the way. We're not talking about anything here that's completely groundbreaking. We do believe that the time to get this to market quickly, even for the smaller community banks, is really going to be crucial, though. This is a big timing thing. Most banks lack the technology now. An anecdote there is we have a couple of partners in the banking space, couple of clients in the banking space, and they represent a total of about 1,500 branches between these partners, and they represent about 8,000 frontline representatives. None of those 1,500 branches or 8,000 frontline representatives are currently today equipped with video technology to be able to do this. They simply do not have the technology to deliver this experience today. So there is a technology aspect to it. And we showed you that 57% of people are comfortable using video conferencing. 57% is not 100%, but it's a lot greater than it was before, and it's a growing trend, but you still don't have 100% adoption. That's where banks are going to have to determine how much they want to push the envelope in driving that adoption, pushing people to adopt further, as opposed to continuing with all these expensive and potentially impersonal interactions that are driving a lot of cost and not necessarily driving what the customer wants or needs. So there are drawbacks. I want to be clear and say, we believe that this is an opportunity. We believe there are going to be things that you're going to have to deal with to make this video transaction, this video consultation a reality, but we believe that they're worth it. So I'm going to go into how we get those steps right. How do you put these puzzle pieces together and make this something that can actually work for the bank and work for the customer? Now, I'm going to go through these fairly quickly. There's a lot of work behind each one of these, but I'm going to try to give you some food for thought of, okay, if you believe that this is something that your institution needs to pursue, where might you start? The first is align on what the customer needs and validate with employees. So what I mean by this is when you think about your organization, everybody in that organization, the people in the leadership group, have to agree that you are meeting an unmet customer need, or you are providing an experience that is better than it was before. And what I mean by that is if you're going to pursue any customer experience innovation, we truly believe that you have the bar that you have to set for yourself before you do anything is, would this have been a better experience even before coronavirus hit? Would this have been better before? Now you think about the car example. I'll go back to that one. Was it a better experience before? Well, they launched it before coronavirus. So a lot of people believed that starting the process through a very convenient, low pressure interaction between the brand and the customer was a better experience then. So anything that you pursue, you should be aligned on the fact that we are doing this because it's better for the customer. If it's just for cost savings, you see how that's received when banks just start shuttering branches for the sake of doing it. It's not well received. If it's just for the sake of saving money, or if it's just for the safety, you're not going to have an enduring evolution of your customer experience, it's not going to stick. It has to be something that truly provides a better experience for the customer. And the people inside your organization need to agree on that before you do anything. Agree on how it makes the customer's life better. Before you do anything after that, you really need to validate this with the people who talk to customers. We are huge advocates for the frontline representatives. We believe in providing them with better tools, better processes to serve that customer better. This has to pass their sniff test. You have to say, here's how we think it makes it better. Here's what we believe customers are reaching out to us for. Here's why we believe they're coming in the branches. We believe we can address 40%, 70%, whatever that number is of those customers' needs through these evolutions and give them a better experience than what we have had before. You've got to put it in front of your people and see if they agree. Because if they don't buy into it and they're the ones that have to deliver it, you're stuck. Don't get off go if the talent that you have, especially your good talent, go to your best people. If they don't feel like this is going to deliver better for the customer, it's not worth pursuing. Moving on to the concerns around privacy, security, data breaches, things like that. Again, we believe that some form of this absolutely can be done, but it's going to be critical that an organization define what can be accomplished and what can't be accomplished. It is okay with every one of your contact channels right now. You say, no, we can't do that through this channel. You're going to have to go to a branch, or you're going to have to go online, whatever the case may be. There are limitations to everything. Don't run from the limitations and say that the limitations are too great not to stand up this interaction. There are going to be things you simply cannot do. Understand what they are, get comfortable with them, and just tell people you can't do this, but really accentuate the things that you can do. You can provide that advice. If you're not delivering, if you're not necessarily going through all their balances and things like that over a video transaction, whatever those limitations are, live with them and recognize the fact that the one-to-one interaction, the convenience, the personalized nature of it are going to trump a lot of the limitations that exist. So our concern is that a lot of organizations are going to look at the logistics and say, we can't do this. We know it's being done right now. We know that there are banks that are providing this right now. Now, in a lot of cases, you have banks that are providing some sort of video interaction in the branch, and I will get to that in a minute. That's not what we're talking about. We are talking about something that is more convenient for the customers, more convenient, frankly, for the bank and the employees as well. Evaluate the technology needed. We recognize that there's going to be a technology lift here. When you think about what this can save, between the savings with customers, with savings between, branch efficiencies, moving, not necessarily needing as many staff members into in the branch experience. When you think about the ways that banks can save through this, the investment in technology is going to be a drop in the bucket. And I want to be very clear and say, I'm a service first person, not a technology person. I'm not a technology salesperson. I'm not out there to do anything other than look for ways that people and technology converge to provide a better experience for customers. Yes, there is going to be work involved here. Yes, there's going to be work groups, and yes, there's going to be IT involved. But at the end of the day, it's going to be worth it to try to figure this piece out. It's going to give you so much more flexibility. When you think about the things that people will need, again, I want to reiterate, we're not talking about an in-branch video experience. If the experience requires somebody to go physically sit in a branch and push on a button, and then a face pops up on a video monitor or on a television screen, think about that. What you've basically just said is, we value enough to innovate, but not enough to go the full way. We want to save money on this interaction by having the person be virtual and not have them be in this branch, but we're not going to save you the time of actually coming into the branch. It's not an ideal transaction. It's progress. It's showing that banks are trying to be innovative, but they really need to take it a step further and put it on the customer's terms and put it on the employee's terms. So what are the things that they're going to need? They're going to need computers or devices with cameras. They're going to, iPads would be sufficient, right? Making sure that the security is there, making sure that VPN access is available. If there are ways that you can be doing some sort of two-way authentication, potentially you have the person in the interaction say, if we're going to discuss your account today, I need to verify that you are who you say you are, and they can send something out, they can initiate it, person types a code in. We all do this on our phones right now, this multi-factor authentication. If that's simple, and that technology is available now, If that can be done, potentially that opens up the transaction, the interaction to cover more ground. All those things are going to need to be explored. I'm not saying that it's an easy lift, but the technology does exist to do this. They're going to need guidance on things like where they can do this from, right? If they're going to be at home, if people are going to be allowed to work remotely, think about a relationship manager, a relationship banker. If they're calling on a retail customer or a small business customer, are they able to do it from home? Do they have to be in VPN? Can they access it if they're not on VPN? Making sure you cover all your bases. It's not going to be simple, but it's going to be worth going through. Two more to finish up on here. This is one that's very near and dear to our heart, and I really believe that this is going to be the key to success. It's really going to be focused on equipping the right talent with the new technology and to deliver this new experience. This is not going to be provided to everybody right away. You have to select the right talent, put them in the right environment to test this and learn from it. You have to give them a chance to succeed. If you take people that are resistant to technology change and you start handing them these new experiences, they are not going to be able to deliver the quality of customer experience that you want. And going along with that is the idea of testing, right? We always say that when you're going to test something, when you're going to pilot something, selecting the right people, the right locations, the right audience to test with is absolutely critical, right? If you compare the people, the right people, with an organization that's really willing to be, an explorer in regard to finding ways to deliver this new experience, then you're going to be much better off. The quicker you move, the more you're going to learn. Experience is really going to drive, time in market with these tools, testing them, trying to expand the reach of these tools. The quicker you can do that, the better you're going to be, the better you're going to be able to differentiate that experience, and the better you're going to compete against your competition. The more you're going to be able to say your experience is modern, it is a hallmark of your brand, and it is worth doing business with your bank simply because you can deliver an experience that's superior to what your competitors can. So you're not going to get there if you're not willing to test. Start small, start with the right people, and get it into market as soon as possible. So that's where I wrap up for the day in terms of the content that I had provided. There's one last point that I want to reinforce. I said it a handful of times, but banks will figure this out. If you say, oh, we can never do this in banking for this reason or that reason, I promise you that is not the case. There are going to be banks, there are already banks that have found a way to say, no, we can provide this level of service, even if it's not perfect. It's better than it was before. And if you can continue to push that thinking, push that evolution, you will be better off in the long run. So don't just chalk this up to we can't do this in banking. The banks that figure this out are going to win. That's what I have for today.
Thanks, Chris. If people have questions, they have a couple options here. One approach would be to type it into the chat function, and we'll be looking for those. It's also possible for people to unmute their lines. While people are doing that, Chris, one of the things that you made clear is that the research shows that a large percentage, 57% of Americans are getting some experience with video technology. They're using different platforms. Do you have a sense, either based on specific research that you've seen or maybe some guesses, as to what guys really like those interactions? We hear people complaining a little bit about being zoomed out, but what's your sense about whether people actually like to interact that way?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I think that there's two answers. One is, so we've been at this, it'll be 10 weeks Friday, okay? If you think about the evolution in the quality of the video conferencing experience just in those 10 weeks, how much Zoom has improved, the user experience has evolved. Not to mention the fact that who else is getting into video conferencing? Facebook is getting into video conferencing. You've got Google that is going to take their Hangouts, scrap it, and come with a much more robust tool. So the technology is going to continue to get better. So the experience is better today than it was when you did your first Zoom happy hour 8, 9, 10 weeks ago at this point. So that would be one aspect. The other aspect of this is, I think of it as, I believe that the video interaction is going to be as good as what its alternative is. So when you think about it, it's, if somebody were to say, do they like it? Okay, I'm not going to go so far as to say that those 57% of people like doing this via Zoom. I'm sure some prefer the whole work from home setup and things like that. But They might not necessarily like it, but if it is better, if it's more convenient and it's more personalized than their typical options would be to get what they need, then I think you're going to find people, they will take the path of least resistance. If it makes them still feel pretty good about the support that they're getting, but saves them the trip someplace, look at the way that people have adopted online grocery purchasing in the last 10 weeks. Those things are not going to go away. If the conveniences are there, people will stick with them. They'll find a way to adopt in greater numbers and to commit to that contact channel if it's more convenient for them.
One of the things I've seen a little bit of research that would suggest that banking consumers have started to get a lot more excited about things that bankers have been talking about for years, some of the online tools, because in this period they've tested them out and they have been proven to be, in some respects, better, more convenient, all the things you're talking about. I'd be curious if you could talk for a second more about employees, because you say it's really important to get the right people in these roles. You and I have had discussions about whether the average bank employee is able to deliver the quality experience that a lot of our clients are looking for. Do you think that this is going to lead to some changes in the composition of the current banking workforce?
So, I mean, this could be a whole separate hour call, but I would say that when you think about the really big opportunity here, any bank that we work with, to your point, Ned, has conveyed to us that attracting, training, retaining talent, especially in these types of roles, in these customer-facing roles, in branches, for example, is really challenging. Finding a high-quality person who can be a financial professional for what the typical branch employee makes it's very challenging. So we believe that this is going to open up a whole new talent pool. And when we talk about select the right talent, I am not advocating that you take your call center team and turn them into a video call bank tomorrow. That's not really what we're saying. What we're saying is looking at opportunities to take maybe a higher touch interaction with that customer. Let's look at those relationship bankers, those relationship managers, the people who are serving sort of, they're straddling that retail and small bank, small business customer, thinking about the work that they do, the way that this can build efficiency into their day and really drive convenience for the person that they're serving is probably even greater than it would be on the average call center call. So we look at it as the opportunity to really carve out the type of role that is that higher touch, higher interaction, providing a lot of advice, and find an employee that might be a higher skill level. If you can give them more flexibility in their workday and they're not necessarily reporting to a branch every day or whatever the case may be, if you increase flexibility, you're going to, in my mind, you're going to increase the level of talent that you can attract.
There's a question added in about security that people are implementing to prevent hacking into video, and whether you have any perspective on that.
So to be completely honest, 3 weeks ago, I would have said I believe that mass market tools like Zoom and things like that would be tools that organizations could use. Maybe not so much in the banking space, but I do believe that what's going to end up happening is where this will go with banks is it will be an initiated transaction or initiated interaction, very similar to what you have with Cadillac. So basically, the technology is built into the site. It's not a third-party software. The security is already built in, all of that. And it would be, yes, I will meet you at basically in this virtual room at this time, and the video interaction will be already programmed into the website. It will not be a third-party app. I believe that's ultimately where we'll go to secure the, to provide the privacy and security that a banking customer is typically going to need. In the short term, I still think there are ways. Zoom has obviously increased their security tremendously. There are ways to, even amp that up on an enterprise level with some of the enterprise tools that are available. But I think you're going to see it increase over time. But I look at it as if you simply cannot deliver the secure experience that you need for all transactions, provide the video experience for the things that you can support. Start someplace.
which is another way of saying that there could be a variety of platforms that people might test out as opposed to testing out all, which would be the ideal customer experience. So, but find a way to start them.
I'll just throw this out there. You think about Ned, you and I have talked about as you get into some of the bigger boys in the commercial banking side and some of the bigger deals that they're doing, right? You have people that are running good-sized businesses. Right now, they simply don't have the time to meet. You do not have an opportunity for their commercial banker, their relationship manager to go visit them. Mm-hmm. And you have commercial bankers that simply sit there and say, I cannot drive the quality of interaction that I want. I'm not face-to-face. I can't shake their hand. I can't look them in the eye. I can't share a meal with them. And they're paralyzed. They don't know how to use video. That talent is not equipped to drive that interaction. And you're talking about multi-million-dollar, tens of millions of dollars in some of these transactions. And those people are simply ill-equipped to provide that experience for their customers right now. That needs to change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hey, Chris, this is Mark Anderson in Michigan here. Good information, by the way. This is good. Adding to what, in setting up a meeting on let's say the bank's website for a virtual consultation, I get all that. That can be structured, 2:00 on Friday, whatever. But when we look at seamless digital experiences that, the 18 to 26-year-old customers that are going to be our growth of our organizations, and they want everything on their devices immediately. If they're doing something digital, do you see that there could be like a link that they could automatically link to somebody live and in person on their smartphone if they're running into a problem? You see that? Is that something that's even feasible?
I actually think that's even more feasible than the bigger picture that I was talking about with the relation. I think that's actually quicker to accomplish. That already exists. There are a lot of chat to video tools that are available out there, and you can take I'm not saying don't take call center teams, because I do think that that's going to be an aspect of it. But if you have agents that are now taking calls, and you can, for that 18 to 26-year-old, make it it's as convenient as making the phone call, and potentially even more convenient, but it's more personalized. It's a person on the other end. I absolutely think that, I truly believe that's easier to pull off right now than even getting people like relationship bankers equipped to be able to do the video transactions. That can be done right now.
Okay.
It's being done right now. Other industries do it right now.
Thank you.
Of course.
Any other questions for Chris? Stephanie, I think we've come to the end of the hour. I'll pass it back to you, and thank you, Chris, for your presentation here. Stephanie, thank you for the invitation. Your show.
My pleasure. Thanks, Ned, for connecting us with Chris. Chris, great presentation. For everyone on the webinar today, I did record it, so I'll send you out a link. You can share as well, and you have Chris's contact information, and reach out with any questions, or I'm happy to assist with that as well. But thank you all. Thanks, Ned. Again, Chris, appreciate your time, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thanks for attending, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Ned.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Mark.